A number of people have claimed that a full-scale nuclear war is likely to cause human extinction. By full-scale war, I mean a nuclear exchange between major world powers such as the US, the United States, Russia, and China, using the complete arsenals of each country today. Note that the total number of warheads today is about at 14,000, and this is significantly smaller than the height of the Cold War, which was at like somewhere around 80 to 70,000. While the extinction of nuclear war is unlikely today, it may become more likely if significantly more warheads are deployed or if designs of weapons change significantly. There are currently two potential mechanisms of human extinction from nuclear war. One, kinetic destruction and radiation. And both of these are not plausible, at least from my research. First, kinetic destruction. There simply aren't enough nuclear warheads to kill everyone directly with kinetic force, and there likely will never be. There are about roughly 14,000 nuclear weapons, as I said, and let's suppose that they have an average yield of something about like 1 megaton. This is a conservative guess. The actual average is about closer to 100 kilotons. With a 1 megaton warhead, you can create a fireball covering 3 kilometers squared and a moderate pressure wave that knocks down most residential houses in about 155 kilometers squared. The former kills nearly everyone, and the latter kills a decent percentage of people, but not everyone. Let's be conservative and assume the pressure wave kills everyone in its radius. 1400 times 155 equals 2.17 million kilometers. The New York metro area is about 8,680 kilometers squared. So all the nuclear weapons in the world could destroy about 250 New York metro areas. This is a lot, but not nearly enough. Even if someone intentionally tried to hit all the populations at once, total land surface of Earth is about 510 million kilometers squared. Urban area, by one estimate, is about 2% or about 10 million kilometers squared. Since the total possible area that can be destroyed from nuclear weapons is about roughly 2.17 million kilometers squared, this is considerably less than a lower bound on the area of human habitation, which is about, like, as I said, 10 million kilometers squared. There should be basically no risk of human extinction from kinetic destruction. I use this using a nuke map, and there's an even more obvious reason why kinetic damage wouldn't lead to human extinction is because there's only like nuclear states only threaten one or several countries at a time, and never the population centers of the entire world. Even if NATO countries and Russia and like all of China went to war at the same time, Africa, South Africa, and the neutral regions would be spared any like damage, any kinetic damage at least from like nuclear weapons. Second, radiation. Radiation won't kill everyone because there aren't, as I said, there aren't enough weapons. There are only about 14 million, 14,000, as I said, and radiation from them would be concentrated in some areas and wholly absent from other areas. Even worse affected areas, lethal radiation from fallout would drop to survivable levels within weeks. Here's worth noting that there's an inherent trade-off between length of half-life and energy released by things we call radionuclides. The shorter half-life, the more energy will be released, and the longer half-life, the less energy. The fallout products from modern nuclear weapons are very lethal, but only for several days to weeks. So let's try the same calculation we used with kinetic damage and see if an attack aimed at optimizing fallout for killing everyone could succeed. Uh, let's say the fallout contains about 100 rads per hour. Like the fallout contour for like 100 rads per hour. 400 rads is thought to be enough to kill like 50% of the population, so 100 rads per hour is likely to kill almost all people not in some kind of shelter. We need to switch to using a ground burst detonation rather than an air burst detonation because ground bursts create far more fallout. One one ground burst would create an area about 8,000 kilometers squared of like 100 less than 100 revs per hour. So let's multiply that by 14,000 warheads, and we get about 112 kilometers per hour. That's a lot, and it's still less than 510 million kilometers squared of Earth's land mass, at least. So, but it's still more than like the 10 million kilometers squared of urban space. Presumably, this is enough to cover every human habitation. So, in principle, it might be possible to kill everyone with radiation from existing nuclear weapons. But in practice, it would be almost impossible to kill every human via radiation from the existing nuclear arsenals, even if they were targeted explicitly for this purpose. The first reason is that the fallout patterns are very, very uneven. After a ground burst, fallout is carried by the wind, so some areas will be hit bad and some areas will be hardly affected by any fallout. Even most human population centers were covered, even if most human centers were covered, a few areas will be like certainly safe. Two other things that make extinction by radiation very unlikely. Many countries, especially in the southern hemisphere, are unlikely to be unaffected by fallout, like much at all, since most of these countries are likely to be neutral in a conflict and not near combatant countries. So they should be relatively safe. While fallout might travel for hundreds of kilometers, it still won't reach places separated by greater distances. Fallout that reaches the upper atmosphere will eventually fall back down, but usually after the period of lethal radioactivity, the other mitigating factor is that, like in a typical nuclear war plants, ground bursts are usually restricted to hardened targets, and air bursts are favored for population and industry centers. This is because air bursts maximize the size of destructive pressure wave. Airburst detonations result in little lethal fallout reaching the ground. So populations not down with the military targets would likely be safe from the worst of radiological effects in a war scenario. The final protection from extinction by radiation is simply the large amounts of mass between people and the radiation source. In other words, fallout shelters. After several weeks, the radionuclides in the fallout from the groundburst detonations will have decayed to the point where humans can survive outside of shelters. And many fallout shelters exist in the world. So many more could be easily made in a day or two with a shovel, some ground, and some boards. Even if lethally radioactive fallout from groundbursts cover all population centers, many humans would still survive in shelters. The risk of extinction from a nuclear weapon induced radiation wouldn't be complete without discussing two factors: nuclear power plants and radiological weapons. This is only going to be covered briefly, but they don't change the conclusions much. Nuclear power plants can be targeted by nuclear weapons to create large amounts of fallout with a longer half-life, but less energy per unit time. The main concern here is that nuclear power plants and spent fuel sites contain a much greater mass of radioactive material than nuclear missiles can carry. The danger primarily comes from spreading already radiative spent or unspent nuclear fuel. The risk this poses is requires way longer analysis. But the short version is that while nuking a nuclear power plant or stored fuel site would create really long-lived fallout, it would still be concentrated in a relatively small area. Fortunately, even a nuclear detonation wouldn't spread the nuclear fuel more than 100 kilometers at most. Having regions of countries covered in spent nuclear fuel would be really bad, but it doesn't much raise the but it doesn't raise the risk of extinction that much. Radiological weapons are no, while radiological weapons are designed to maximize the spread of lethal fallout rather than the destructive yield. The particular concern from the extinction perspective is that they are designed to create fallout that continues to emit levels for radiation that to make an area uninhabitable for years. But these kinds of radiological weapons kill more slowly. Even though they kill more slowly, they can still kill. In principle, radiological weapons can be used to kill everyone on Earth. However, in practice, the same constraints apply to the standard nuclear weapons. The same constraints apply to it as like the standards, the standard nuclear weapons. Radiological, and there are also like more constraints too. Radiological weapons can't produce more fallout than standard warheads, and they would only just produce fallout with different characteristics. As a result, the amount of radiological weapons required to cover every part of Earth's surface would be massively expensive, like likely as expensive as the largest existing nuclear arsenals like today, not like during the height of the Cold War. And they will also serve no military purpose. Their inefficiency in destruction and death would be compared to standard nuclear weapons is like probably why radiological weapons have never been developed or deployed in large numbers. This makes them an ongoing theoretical concern, but not an existential risk in the immediate future, because the military doesn't have that much use for them. I mean, but a concerning development is like Russia claims that to have developed a large yield or like a submersible nuclear weapon, and they suggest that it could be used as a radiological weapon. But even if this is true, it's unlikely to be deployed in large numbers. So, in conclusion, uh, this we only discussed like two possible mechanisms of like human extinction, but the fact that one of these mechanisms, but while nuclear tests provided information about the effects of these weapons, the test environments were significantly different from war environments. Large model uncertainties remain, given that the greatest existential threat from nuclear war appears to be from like nuclear impacts instead of like the radiation or like the kinetic explosion itself. So it would be great to see like more researchers study the climate effects at least. But there appears to be like several interventions possible for reducing the risk of nuclear war. So at the policy level, a commitment from the largest nuclear powers to refrain from targeting the majority of cities would reduce the risk of accidental, omnicide. Improving like the maximum resilience capacity of like human populations best positioned to survive nuclear winter would also make humanity less vulnerable to nuclear winter and could also be protect against other existential threats. So in conclusion, human extinction probably won't happen, but like a lot of people would still die, and nuclear war still like shouldn't happen.